They abandoned me at the gas station during our road trip. What they didn't know about the luxury cabin I'd rented. If you enjoy this story, please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more true stories like this one. Your support means everything to me. The hot summer air shimmered above the concrete as I walked out of the gas station bathroom, my small travel bag hanging from my shoulder. That's when I saw it. My sister-in-law Sarah's black SUV pulling away from the pumps, tires squealing as it merged onto the highway. My brother David was in the passenger seat, and I could see the backs of my niece and nephew's heads through the rear window. They were leaving, without me. I stood frozen, mouth open, as the vehicle grew smaller in the distance. I was 47 years old, standing alone at a gas station in the middle of nowhere, Georgia, abandoned by my own family. The same family I had given $15,000 to last year when David lost his job. The same family whose children I had helped raise after their mother walked out 6 years ago. The same family who had begged me to come on this bonding road trip that I had paid $3,200 to finance. My name is Amara Okafor, and I had just been abandoned at the quick-stop gas station on Route 41, 3 hours from home and 4 hours from our destination. I had no car. My suitcase with most of my clothes was in their trunk. My purse with my wallet was still in Sarah's vehicle. All I had was my phone, my small travel bag with basic toiletries, and the $85 in cash that I had in my pocket. "Ma'am, are you okay?" The young attendant had stepped outside and was looking at me with concern. I must have been standing there for several minutes, staring at the empty highway. My family just left me," I said, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. "They what?" His eyes widened. "Did they forget you?" I shook my head slowly. "No." Sarah looked right at me through the window as they pulled away. The memory of her smirk burned into my mind. That wasn't a mistake or forgetfulness. That was deliberate. I walked back into the gas station in a daze and sat down on the small bench near the coffee station. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I called David's number. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I sent a text. "David, you left me at the gas station. Please come back." No response. I tried Sarah's number. Voicemail. I texted her. "What are you doing? Please turn around and get me." No response. I waited 15 minutes, calling repeatedly. Nothing. They had blocked my number. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't an impulsive act. This was planned. They had waited for me to go to the bathroom, grabbed my purse, and driven off with my luggage. This was calculated. The attendant, whose name tag read Tyler, brought me a cup of water. "Ma'am, do you have someone you can call to pick you up?" I thought about it. My closest friend Jasmine was on a business trip in California. My other friends lived back in Atlanta, 3 hours away. I had moved to the small town of Maplewood 6 years ago to be closer to David and the kids after their mother left. I had put my life on hold to help raise my niece and nephew. I had turned down promotions that would have required relocation. I had invested my savings in their well-being, and this was how they repaid me. "I can call a taxi," I said finally, trying to sound calm. "Ma'am, we're pretty remote here. The nearest taxi service is in Smithville, about 45 minutes away. It would cost a fortune to get back to Atlanta." That's when I remembered. The cabin. In my travel bag was the confirmation for the luxury mountain cabin I had secretly rented as a surprise for the family. It was a beautiful 5-bedroom lodge with a hot tub, game room, and breathtaking views. I had spent $4,500 of my savings on it as a special treat. I hadn't told them about it because I wanted it to be a surprise when we reached the mountains. The cabin was still about 4 hours away, but it was paid for. It was mine. For the first time since watching Sarah's SUV disappear, I felt a sense of clarity cutting through my shock. They thought they were abandoning me at this gas station to find my own way home, broke and humiliated. But they didn't know about the luxury cabin I'd rented. They were headed to a cheap motel that David had booked, while I had the key to a mountain paradise. "Actually," I said to Tyler, "I need to get to Blue Ridge Mountains. Is there any way to get there from here?" Tyler scratched his head. "Blue Ridge? That's a good 4 hours north. There's a bus that comes through here at 5:30 p.m. headed toward Chattanooga. It's not direct, but it might get you closer." I checked the time. It was just past 1 p.m., over 4 hours to wait. I nodded slowly. "I'll take it." Tyler offered me the use of the gas station's small break room while I waited. I sat there, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of what had happened. Why would they do this to me? After everything I had done for them? The answers came slowly as I thought back over the past few months. The whispered conversations between David and Sarah that stopped when I entered the room. The increasing frequency of their emergencies that required financial help. Sarah's thinly veiled comments about my interference in raising the children. The time I'd caught David going through my financial documents in my home office when he thought I was asleep. They had been planning something, and now it was clear what. They wanted me out of the picture. They wanted access to my money without me watching. They wanted to eliminate the anti-Amara problem, as I once overheard Sarah call it. The irony was painful. I had given them everything, and they had repaid me with betrayal. But they had made one critical mistake. They didn't know about the luxury cabin I'd rented. They didn't know that while they drove to their cheap motel, I would be headed to a mountain paradise that they had been excluded from. As I waited for the bus, I made a decision. This abandonment wasn't going to break me. It was going to free me. For 6 years, I had put my life on hold for them. I had sacrificed my career, my savings, my relationships. I had given everything to a family that saw me as nothing more than an ATM and a free babysitter. That ended today. The luxury cabin that I had rented as a gift for them would now be a gift to myself, a place to heal, to plan, and to reclaim my life. The bus arrived right on schedule at 5:30 p.m. I paid the $42.50 fare with some of my remaining cash and settled into a seat by the window. As the bus pulled away from the gas station, I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. I grieved for the family I thought I had, for the love I believed was reciprocated, but I also felt the first stirrings of freedom, like a bird released from a cage it didn't even know it was in. They abandoned me at a gas station during our road trip, I whispered to myself as the landscape rolled by. But what they didn't know about was the luxury cabin I'd rented, and they never will. The bus ride gave me plenty of time to think. As the highway stretched endlessly before us, I scrolled through my phone, looking at photos of David, Sarah, and the kids. In every picture I was there, at birthday parties, school events, family dinners. I had been so deeply woven into their lives that I had forgotten to have one of my own. I opened my banking app to assess my situation. What I saw made my blood run cold. My checking account, which had held over $12,000 yesterday, now showed a balance of $134.56. My savings account, which had contained my emergency fund of $35,000, was completely empty. My hands shook as I called my bank. After verifying my identity, the representative confirmed my worst fears. Yes, Ms. Okafor, there were 2 transfers made this morning. One for $11,865.44 from your checking to an account at First National under the name of David Okafor, and another for $35,000 from your savings to the same account. I didn't authorize those transfers, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The transfers were made using your online banking credentials. Was your account compromised? I closed my eyes as the truth hit me. The night before we left for the trip, I had left my laptop open while I packed. David had been in my house, supposedly helping me prepare. He must have seen my password manager or found my login information. This wasn't just abandonment. This was theft. This was a calculated plan to take everything I had. I need to report this as fraud, I said firmly. The representative took down the information and promised to open an investigation, but warned me it could take weeks to resolve. In the meantime, my accounts were nearly empty. I hung up and stared out the window, feeling a cold rage build inside me. The pieces were falling into place now. David and Sarah hadn't just decided to abandon me on a whim. This was the culmination of a long-term plan to take my money and cut me out of their lives once I was no longer useful. I thought about the children, 12-year-old Zara and 10-year-old Mason. Did they know what their father and stepmother had done? Were they part of the deception? I couldn't believe they would be. They had always seemed to genuinely love me. But children are easily manipulated, and Sarah had never hidden her resentment of the close relationship I had with them. As the bus continued north, I took stock of what I had left. $40.50 in cash after paying for the bus ticket, a nearly empty bank account, my phone, the clothes on my back and the few items in my travel bag, and the confirmation for a luxury cabin that was already paid for. I still had my job as a corporate training consultant, but I had taken 2 weeks off for this trip. I wouldn't receive another paycheck for nearly 3 weeks. I had my health, my intelligence, and my determination. It would have to be enough. The bus made a stop at a small town just before sunset. I used the opportunity to buy a cheap sandwich and a bottle of water, carefully counting out my remaining cash. While eating my meager dinner at the bus station, I made a list of what I needed to do. Get to the cabin, contact the police about the stolen money, cancel all shared accounts and credit cards, figure out transportation once at the cabin, contact work about possibly returning early, find a lawyer. The last one made me pause. I had always protected David. After our parents died when he was just 22 and I was 30, I had stepped in as his support system. When his wife left him with 2 small children, I had sacrificed everything to help. I had made excuses for his financial irresponsibility, his emotional manipulation, his increasing entitlement. No more. He had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He had stolen my money, abandoned me, and betrayed every ounce of trust I had placed in him. He would face the consequences. When the bus reached Chattanooga just after 10 p.m., I had to transfer to another line that would take me closer to Blue Ridge. It was nearly midnight when I arrived at the small mountain town of Pineville, still about 30 miles from my cabin. The bus station was closed and the town was silent. I sat on a bench outside the station, the cool mountain air making me shiver in my light summer dress. I hadn't packed for mountain nights. My warm clothes were in my suitcase, in Sarah's SUV, probably being picked through and divided up like spoils of war. I opened the cabin confirmation on my phone. The address was 1824 Eagle's Nest Road, Blue Ridge. According to my Maps app, it was a 40-minute drive from where I sat. Without a car, it might as well have been on another planet. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm me, headlights appeared on the empty street. A pickup truck slowed as it approached the bus station. The driver, an older woman with silver hair, rolled down her window. "You look like you're stranded, honey," she called out. "I am," I admitted. "I need to get to Blue Ridge, but there are no more buses tonight." She studied me for a moment. "I'm Eleanor. I live about 15 miles up toward Blue Ridge. I can take you that far if it helps. Just came into town to pick up my grandson from his late shift." A young man in his early 20s emerged from a diner across the street and climbed into the passenger seat. "That would be wonderful." "Thank you," I said, relief washing over me. As I climbed into the back seat of the pickup, Eleanor introduced her grandson Marcus. He works at the Moonlight Diner during summer break from college. "I'm Amara," I said. "I really appreciate this." "What brings you to Blue Ridge this time of night with no car?" Marcus asked, turning to face me. I hesitated, not wanting to share the full humiliation of my situation with strangers. "Family troubles," I said finally. "I rented a cabin up there, but my transportation plans fell through." Eleanor nodded knowingly in the rearview mirror. "Family can be the greatest blessing and the greatest curse, sometimes all at once." We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the truck winding its way up mountain roads that grew increasingly remote. When Eleanor finally stopped at a small cabin with a large garden, I thanked her profusely. "You're still about 25 miles from Blue Ridge proper," she said. "But you can stay in my guest room tonight if you'd like. It's too late to be trying to find your way to a strange cabin." Her kindness brought tears to my eyes. After the calculated cruelty of my own family, the generosity of this stranger was almost too much to bear. "Thank you," I whispered. "I would appreciate that very much." Eleanor's cabin was simple but comfortable, filled with handmade quilts and furniture that spoke of a lifetime of mountain living. She showed me to a small bedroom with a handmade quilt on the bed and a window that looked out into the dark forest. "Bathroom's down the hall," she said. "I'll leave a towel for you. We get up early around here, but you sleep as long as you need." After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing myself to fully process the events of the day. My family had abandoned me. My brother had stolen my life savings. I was alone in a strange mountain town with almost no money and no transportation. Yet somehow, I had found kindness in the form of Eleanor and Marcus. I had a roof over my head tonight and a luxury cabin waiting for me tomorrow. I had my health, my intelligence, and a growing determination to not just survive this betrayal, but to emerge stronger from it. As I lay down on the unfamiliar bed, I made a promise to myself. This would be the last time anyone took advantage of my generosity. This would be the last time I sacrificed my own well-being for people who didn't value me. Tomorrow would be the first day of my new life, a life where I put myself first. The last thought I had before falling asleep was of the luxury cabin waiting for me. The cabin that David and Sarah didn't know about. The cabin that was supposed to be a gift for them, but would now be my sanctuary, my place to heal, to plan, and to rebuild. They had abandoned me at a gas station during our road trip. But what they didn't know about the luxury cabin I'd rented was that it would be the beginning of my resurrection, not the end of my story. I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of birds outside my window. For a moment, disoriented in the unfamiliar room, I forgot the events of the previous day. Then it all came flooding back. The abandonment, the theft, the betrayal. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. A text message, "Auntie Amara, where are you? Dad won't tell us what happened. We're worried." This is Zara using Mason's friend's phone. My heart clenched. The children. They hadn't been part of this. I texted back quickly. "I'm safe, Zara. Your dad and Sarah left me at a gas station yesterday. I'll call you soon. Love you both." I hesitated, then added, "Please delete these messages so your dad doesn't see them." Got dressed in the same clothes from yesterday and made my way to the kitchen where Eleanor was frying bacon and eggs. "Good. Morning," she said warmly. "Hungry?" "Starving," I admitted. I hadn't eaten a proper meal since lunch the day before. As we ate, Eleanor studied me with kind but perceptive eyes. "You want to tell me what really happened?" No judgment here, just an old woman who's seen enough of life to know trouble when it shows up on a bus bench at midnight. Something about her grandmotherly demeanor broke through my reserve. I told her everything. About raising my brother after our parents died. About stepping in when his wife left. About the years of financial support and childcare I'd provided. I told her about the road trip, being abandoned at the gas station, discovering the theft of my savings, and the luxury cabin I'd rented as a surprise. Eleanor listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or shaking her head. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Some people," she finally said, "will take and take until there's nothing left to take. Then they'll discard you like an empty wrapper. Your brother sounds like one of those people." I enabled him, I admitted. I always made excuses. I always bailed him out. "We do that for family," Eleanor said, "until we learn not to. Now about getting you to that cabin. Marcus can drive you. He's heading into Blue Ridge for supplies this morning anyway." "I can't impose," I started. "It's not an imposition. It's what neighbors do. And up here in the mountains, we're all neighbors." True to her word, Eleanor's grandson drove me the remaining distance to my rented cabin later that morning. As we wound up the steep mountain roads, the scenery became increasingly spectacular. Towering pines, dramatic cliffs, glimpses of distant blue ridges that gave the mountains their name. When we pulled up to 1824 Eagle's Nest Road, I gasped. The photos hadn't done it justice. The cabin was a magnificent 3-story lodge built of massive logs and stone, with a wraparound porch and floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the surrounding forest. It was perched on the edge of a ridge with what appeared to be a 180-degree view of the mountain range. "This is where you're staying?" Marcus asked, clearly impressed. "Yes," I said, still taking it in. It was supposed to be for my family, but now it's just for me. Marcus helped me to the door with my small travel bag. I entered the lockbox code from my confirmation email, and the key was right where it was supposed to be. "Thank you, Marcus," I said sincerely. "And please thank your grandmother again for me. Her kindness meant everything." "No problem," he said with a smile. "Grandma left her number in your bag. Call if you need anything. She loves having someone to fuss over." After he left, I entered the cabin and stood in the great room, momentarily overwhelmed by the beauty and the irony of my situation. The space was stunning, soaring ceilings with exposed beams, a stone fireplace that reached to the roof, comfortable leather furniture, and those amazing windows showcasing the view. The kitchen was a chef's dream with granite countertops and high-end appliances. A dining table for 8 sat near windows that offered views while eating. A quick exploration revealed 5 bedrooms. A master suite on the main level with a king bed and luxury bathroom. 2 queen bedrooms upstairs. and a lower level with another queen bedroom and a bunk room that would have been perfect for the children. The lower level also had a game room with a pool table, air hockey, and a large TV. Outside, a massive deck held a hot tub, grill, and outdoor dining area. The view from the deck was breathtaking, layers of blue-tinted mountains stretching to the horizon. All of this beauty, all of this luxury, had been intended as a gift for the very people who had abandoned me and stolen from me. The irony was almost too much to bear. I sat on the deck, looking out at the view, and allowed myself to cry, really cry, for the first time. I cried for the betrayal, for the years of being taken advantage of, for the realization that the family I thought I had was an illusion. When the tears finally stopped, I went inside and made a cup of tea in the gourmet kitchen. Then I sat down at the dining table with my phone and began to methodically document everything. I created a spreadsheet detailing every penny I had given David over the past 6 years, the $15,000 when he lost his job, the $8,000 for Sarah's car repairs, the $3,200 for this very road trip, the monthly contributions to the children's college funds, the countless smaller loans that were never repaid. The total was staggering, over $98,000, not including the money that had just been stolen from my accounts. I wrote down every instance I could remember of caring for the children. The nights I had stayed over when they were sick, the school events I had attended when David and Sarah were too busy, the summer vacations I had taken them on to give their parents a break. I documented the stolen money, $11,860.44 from my checking account and $35,000 from my savings with screenshots from my banking app showing the unauthorized transfers. Finally, I wrote out a detailed timeline of the abandonment, the stops we had made on the trip, the exact location and time of being left at the gas station, the blocked phone calls, the text messages that went unanswered. When I was finished, I had compiled a comprehensive record of 6 years of being used, culminating in theft and abandonment. Looking at it all laid out so starkly made me wonder how I had allowed it to happen. How had I not seen what was right in front of me? The answer was simple and painful. I had wanted so badly to believe I had a family who loved me that I had ignored every sign to the contrary. Using the cabin's Wi-Fi, I sent emails to several local lawyers, briefly explaining my situation and requesting a consultation. I also filed a police report online regarding the theft, attaching screenshots of the unauthorized transfers. By mid-afternoon, I had received responses from 2 attorneys. One, Patricia Lawson, could see me the next day at 2 p.m. in her Blue Ridge office. I confirmed the appointment, then sat back, feeling a sense of grim satisfaction. The wheels of justice were beginning to turn. My phone rang, displaying another unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Auntie Amara?" It was Zara's voice, hushed and anxious. "Are you okay? We're so worried about you." "I'm okay, sweetheart," I assured her, fighting back tears at hearing her voice. "Where are you calling from?" "The motel lobby. Dad and Sarah think we're using the vending machines. Mason's keeping watch. They told us you decided to go home early because you weren't feeling well, but I knew that was a lie. You were so excited about this trip." Her perception startled me. At 12, Zara was clearly more observant than I had given her credit for. "Did something bad happen between you and Dad?" she asked. I took a deep breath, unsure how much to share. These were children caught in the middle of adult betrayal. "Your dad and I had a disagreement," I said carefully. "He decided it would be better if I wasn't on the trip anymore." "But they took your suitcase," Zara said. "Sarah's been wearing your blue sandals, and Dad has your purse in the trunk. I saw it when he was getting something out." My heart sank. They weren't even trying to hide their theft from the children. "Zara, listen to me. I need you to be brave. Things are going to be complicated for a while, but I want you and Mason to know that I love you both very much. Nothing that's happening is your fault. Are you coming back?" Her voice was small. "Not right now," I said honestly, "but I'll always be your Auntie Amara no matter what." I heard a commotion in the background, then Mason's voice. "They're coming." "Gotta go!" The call ended abruptly. I sat staring at the phone, my heart breaking for those children caught in the middle of their parents' betrayal. They deserved better than David and Sarah. They deserved better than being raised by people who would steal and abandon family without remorse. As the afternoon light began to fade, casting long shadows across the luxury cabin that should have been filled with family laughter, I made a decision. I would not let this break me. I would use this betrayal as motivation to reclaim my life, my money, and my sense of self-worth. David and Sarah had abandoned me at a gas station, thinking they were leaving me stranded and broken. What they didn't know was that their cruelty had set me free. Free from obligation, free from manipulation, free from the endless cycle of giving without receiving. And they certainly didn't know about the luxury cabin I'd rented, where I would plan my resurrection and their reckoning. In the gathering darkness, I lit a fire in the stone fireplace and curled up on the plush sofa. Tomorrow I would begin fighting back. Tonight, I would allow myself to rest and heal in the luxury that was meant for them, but would now be my sanctuary. The next morning, I woke with a clear sense of purpose. After making coffee in the gourmet kitchen, I sat on the deck watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of pink and gold. The beauty was almost surreal. These ancient peaks had witnessed countless human dramas and would still be standing long after my troubles were resolved. A rental car was delivered to the cabin at 10 a.m., arranged through a local agency that Eleanor had recommended. It cost $450 for a week, nearly depleting what little remained in my checking account, but it was necessary. I couldn't remain isolated on this mountain without transportation. With wheels secured, I drove into Blue Ridge, a charming mountain town with a mix of traditional Appalachian culture and upscale tourist amenities. My first stop was the police station, where I formally filed a report about the theft from my accounts. Officer Jenkins, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed my documentation with growing concern. "Ms. Okafor, this is a clear case of identity theft and fraud," he said. "The fact that it was perpetrated by a family member doesn't change that. We'll open an investigation immediately." "Will I get my money back?" I asked. "That depends on whether your brother has already spent it," he said honestly. "But the report will help with your bank's fraud investigation and any legal action you decide to take." My next stop was the office of Patricia Lawson, attorney at law. Her office was in a renovated historic home on a side street, elegant but not ostentatious. Patricia herself was a woman about my age with sharp eyes and a confident handshake. "Ms. Okafor, I've reviewed the information you sent," she said after we were seated in her office. "What your brother and sister-in-law have done constitutes multiple crimes: theft, fraud, and potentially abandonment with intent to harm." "Abandonment is a crime?" I asked, surprised. "Leaving someone stranded in a remote location with no resources or transportation can be considered criminal endangerment in certain circumstances," she explained. "But the financial crimes are clear-cut and easier to prosecute." We spent the next hour discussing options. Patricia recommended a three-pronged approach: working with the police on criminal charges for the theft, filing a civil lawsuit to recover the stolen money plus the additional $98,000 I had documented, and seeking a restraining order to prevent David and Sarah from contacting me except through legal channels. "What about the children?" I asked. "I'm worried about them." "They didn't choose their parents." Patricia's expression softened. "That complicates things. If you pursue criminal charges, there's a possibility your brother could face jail time. That would impact the children." "I don't want to hurt them," I said, "but I can't let David and Sarah get away with this." "Let's start with recovery of your money and see where that leads," she suggested. "Sometimes the threat of criminal charges is enough to bring people to the settlement table." I left her office with a retainer agreement and a sense of forward momentum. We would file the civil suit on Monday and request an emergency hearing for the stolen funds. Back at the cabin, I found myself oddly restless despite the progress. Securing legal representation and filing a police report were important steps, but they felt abstract, bureaucratic. I needed something more tangible, more immediate. I tried calling the unknown number that Zara had used, but there was no answer. I texted, "Zara, please let me know you and Mason are okay. Love, Auntie Amara." No response. The silence fed my growing anxiety. What were David and Sarah telling the children? Were they poisoning Zara and Mason against me? The thought was unbearable. On impulse, I checked the location of Sarah's phone using a family tracking app we had all installed for safety during the road trip. To my surprise, it was still active. According to the app, they were at the Blue Mountain Motel, just 15 miles from my luxury cabin. The revelation sent a jolt through me. They were here, in the same small mountain region, staying at the cheap motel while I was in the luxury cabin they knew nothing about. The irony was almost poetic. Before I could fully process this information, my phone rang. "Unknown number. Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Amara, it's Eleanor. Marcus mentioned you might need some groceries up at that fancy cabin, so I'm heading to the store. Can I pick anything up for you?" Her thoughtfulness brought tears to my eyes. "Actually, that would be wonderful. I haven't had a chance to shop yet." After giving her a brief list and arranging to reimburse her, I hung up feeling a renewed sense of connection. Eleanor and Marcus were strangers 2 days ago, yet they had shown me more kindness than my own family. That kindness stood in stark contrast to David's betrayal, fueling my determination to confront this situation head-on. Sitting on the deck overlooking the mountains, I made a decision that was either incredibly brave or foolish. I would go to the Blue Mountain Motel and confront David and Sarah face to face. Not today. Today I would prepare. I would gather my evidence, organize my thoughts, and arm myself with the righteous anger I had every right to feel. Tomorrow I would look them in the eye and demand answers. Eleanor arrived with groceries just before sunset, refusing my attempt to pay her. "Consider it mountain hospitality," she insisted. "Besides, Marcus told me what happened to you. Some people need to be taught about karma, and it sounds like your brother is about to get a lesson." After she left, I cooked a proper meal in the gourmet kitchen, jollof rice and grilled chicken, a comforting taste of my Nigerian heritage. As I ate on the deck watching the sunset, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Tomorrow would be difficult, but necessary. Tonight I would enjoy this unexpected solitude and luxury. The next morning dawned clear and bright. I dressed carefully in clothes borrowed from the cabin's lost and found, a simple black dress that was slightly too large but serviceable, and flat sandals. I packed my documentation in a folder, got into the rental car, and drove the 15 miles to the Blue Mountain Motel with my heart pounding in my chest. The motel was exactly what I expected. A dated 2-story building with exterior corridors and a small pool that had seen better days. Sarah's SUV was parked outside room 214. I parked a few spaces away and sat for a moment, gathering my courage. What was I hoping to accomplish? An admission? An apology? My money back? Perhaps all three, though I knew the likelihood of any was small. Mostly I needed to see their faces. I needed them to see mine. I needed this confrontation to be real, not hidden behind legal documents and police reports. I got out of the car and walked up the exterior stairs to the second floor. Outside room 214, I took a deep breath and knocked firmly. The door opened, revealing Mason in swimming trunks, his eyes widening with shock. "Auntie Amara," he shouted, throwing his arms around my waist. Over his head, I saw Zara leap up from one of the beds. "Auntie!" She ran to join the hug, nearly knocking me over with the force of her embrace. And then, filling the doorway, was David. My brother, my betrayer. His face drained of color as he saw me standing there with his children clinging to me. "Kids, go to the pool," he said sharply. "But Dad, it's Auntie Amara." Mason protested, "Now." His voice left no room for argument. Reluctantly, they disentangled themselves. Zara gave me a meaningful look as they slipped past their father and headed for the stairs. "What are you doing here?" David hissed, stepping outside and pulling the door nearly closed behind him. "How did you even find us?" "Family tracking app," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "The one we installed for safety during the road trip. Ironic, isn't it?" His jaw tightened. "You need to leave, now." "Not until I get some answers," I replied. "Not until you explain why you abandoned me at a gas station and stole my life savings." "Lower your voice," he snapped, looking around nervously. "I don't owe you any explanations," David said, crossing his arms. "You've had it coming for years, controlling everything, acting like you're better than everyone else." Before I could respond, the door opened wider and Sarah appeared. Unlike David, she didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, she looked annoyed, as if I were a persistent salesperson interrupting her day. Well, look who managed to find her way to civilization, she said with a smirk. I told David you'd be fine. You're so resourceful, after all. The casual cruelty in her voice stunned me. They had abandoned me at a remote gas station with almost nothing, stolen my life savings, and yet they were acting like I was the problem. I want my money back, I said, my voice low but firm. All $46,865.44 that you stole from my accounts, plus my purse and my suitcase. David's eyes darted nervously to Sarah, who laughed. Stole? That's a strong word for money you owed us after all these years of interference. Owed you? I was incredulous. I've given you over $98,000 in the past 6 years. I've been a second mother to your children. I've put my life on hold to help you. And this is how you repay me? Help? Sarah's voice rose. You call it help, I call it control. Always there, always watching, always making David feel inadequate. Amara would do it this way. Amara thinks you should. Why can't you manage money like Amara? It was never about helping. It was about making yourself feel superior. Her words hit me like physical blows. Was that how they had seen my support all these years? As control? As condescension? That's not true, I said, though a small voice inside me wondered if there was some truth to her accusation. Had I been overbearing in my desire to help? It doesn't matter now, David said dismissively. What's done is done. The money is already spent. We've paid off our debts, bought a few things we needed. There's nothing to return. You spent $46,000 in 2 days? I asked in disbelief. Credit card debt, Sarah said with a shrug. Car loans, back rent. Plus, I got myself a nice watch. She held up her wrist to show. A gold watch that I recognized as similar to one I owned, one that was probably still in my stolen suitcase, the casual way they admitted to stealing and spending. My money made something inside me snap. All the fear, grief, and shock of the past 3 days crystallized into cold, clear anger. I've filed a police report, I said calmly. Identity theft, fraud, and abandonment with intent to harm. I've hired a lawyer and we're filing a civil suit on Monday for the full amount you've taken from me over the years, nearly $150,000 with interest. Officer Jenkins at the Blue Ridge PD has all my documentation. I've given statements from witnesses who found me stranded. I have screenshots of the bank transfers. I have records of every penny I've given you. David's face had gone pale again. Sarah's smirk faltered. You're bluffing, she said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. In answer, I pulled out my folder and showed them the police report, the lawyer's retainer agreement, and the spreadsheets documenting years of financial support. This is just the beginning, I said. Patricia Lawson is seeking an emergency hearing to freeze your assets. Officer Jenkins is building a case for criminal charges. By the time this is over, you could be facing jail time. You wouldn't do that to us, David said, but he sounded unsure. What about the kids? What about them? I countered. Did you think about them when you abandoned me? When you stole my money? When you taught them that this is how we treat family? Sarah's composure was cracking. You can't prove anything. It'll be your word against ours. I smiled thinly. The bank has records of unauthorized access to my accounts from an IP address that isn't mine. The gas station has security footage of you driving away while looking right at me. There are witnesses who saw me stranded. The evidence is overwhelming. I could see them processing this, realizing that I wasn't the helpless victim they had expected me to be. I wasn't crawling back begging for forgiveness or reconciliation. I was standing up for myself, armed with evidence and legal support. What do you want? David finally asked, his voice subdued. I want my money back. All of it, including what you've borrowed over the years. I want my possessions returned, and I want you to tell the children the truth about what you did. Sarah's eyes narrowed. And if we refuse? Then I'll see you in court, I said simply. And I'll win. The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of betrayal and consequence. From the pool below came the sounds of children laughing, including Zara and Mason, blissfully unaware of the adult drama unfolding above them. We don't have the money, David finally admitted. Even if we wanted to pay you back, we couldn't. Then you'll have to find a way, I said. Sell the things you bought. Take out loans. Get second jobs. Figure it out, the way I've always had to figure out how to bail you out of your messes. Something in my tone must have conveyed my absolute seriousness, because David's defensive posture sagged. Can we at least discuss this like family? The word family coming from his mouth after what he had done felt like a mockery. We stopped being family when you left me stranded at that gas station. Now we're just legal adversaries. I turned to leave, but Sarah's voice stopped me. Wait, what about the kids? Are you going to turn them against us too? I faced them again, my heart aching for Zara and Mason. I love those children, which is more than I can say for either of you right now. I won't lie to them, but I won't try to damage their relationship with you either. That's on you. As I walked away, David called after me, desperation creeping into his voice. Amara, please. We made a mistake. We can work this out. I paused but didn't turn around. Yes, you did make a mistake. A huge one. And now you'll have to live with the consequences. I walked down the stairs, my heart pounding but my stride purposeful. At the bottom, I saw Zara and Mason by the pool, watching me with concerned expressions. I went to them, kneeling to be at their level. I have to go now, I said gently. But I want you both to know that I love you very much. Nothing that's happening between the adults is your fault. Are you and Dad fighting? Mason asked, his lower lip trembling. We have some grown-up problems to work out, I said carefully. But no matter what happens, I will always be your Auntie Amara. Zara, perceptive as always, studied my face. They did something bad to you, didn't they? I hesitated, then nodded slightly. Sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt other adults. But we're working it out. I hugged them both tightly, breathing in the chlorine scent of pool water in their hair, memorizing the feel of their small bodies against mine. I didn't know when I would see them again, and the thought was almost unbearable. I have to go, I whispered, fighting back tears. Be good. Remember, I love you. I stood and walked to my rental car, feeling their eyes on my back the entire way. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw David and Sarah had come down to the pool. The four of them stood watching my departure, the picture-perfect family that had never really existed. Back at the luxury cabin, I sat on the deck looking out at the mountains and let myself cry. For the children I might lose, for the brother I had already lost, for the years of self-deception that had led to this moment. When the tears finally stopped, I called Patricia Lawson and updated her on the confrontation. You handled it perfectly, she assured me. Now we let the legal system do its work. They said they don't have the money, I told her. They've already spent it. That complicates recovery but doesn't change their liability, she explained. If they truly can't pay, the court can garnish wages, seize assets, even force the sale of property. It's a longer road but not a dead end. After hanging up, I felt emotionally drained but oddly liberated. I had faced my betrayers. I had stood my ground. I had begun the process of reclaiming not just my money, but my self-respect. As the sun began to set, painting the mountains in fiery orange and deep purple, I reflected on the strange irony of my situation. David and Sarah had abandoned me at a gas station, thinking they were leaving me helpless and broken. Instead, they had set me free. Free from obligation, free from manipulation, free from the endless cycle of giving without receiving. And they still didn't know about the luxury cabin I'd rented. They were crammed into a dated motel room while I sat in a mountain paradise, planning my future and their reckoning. Sometimes justice has a sense of poetry. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of my phone ringing. It was Officer Jenkins from the Blue Ridge Police Department. Ms. Okafor, I thought you should know that your brother and his wife came in yesterday evening to file a counter-complaint against you. My heart sank. What kind of complaint? They're alleging harassment and making false police reports. They claim the money was a gift, and that you voluntarily left the road trip due to an argument. That's ridiculous, I said, anger rising in my throat. I have documentation. I know, he interrupted gently. Their story has inconsistencies and no supporting evidence. But I wanted you to be aware that they're pushing back. After thanking him, I called Patricia immediately. Her reaction was measured but concerned. This is a typical countermove, she explained. They're trying to muddy the waters, create doubt. It won't hold up against your evidence, but it does signal they're going to fight dirty. What should I do? I asked. Stay the course. Continue documenting everything. And perhaps consider reaching out to anyone else who might have witnessed their pattern of behavior over the years. Her words triggered a realization. There were others who had seen David and Sarah's manipulation firsthand. My friends, co-workers, even some extended family members who had distanced themselves over the years. Tired of David's constant financial crises, I spent the morning making calls, explaining my situation, and asking for written statements about what they had witnessed. The responses were overwhelming. Jasmine, my best friend. I've been telling you for years they were using you. I'll write everything down. The times they canceled plans with you because the kids suddenly got sick, only to see them posting theme park photos on social media the same day. The birthday gifts you bought that they returned for cash. All of it. Michael, my colleague who had hosted us for a holiday party. I remember David asking me for investment advice, then trying to get me to loan him money for some sure-thing business opportunity. When I refused, he badmouthed me to you. I'll document that conversation. Even my cousin Tanya, who lived in Nigeria but had visited 3 years ago. They treated you like a servant in your own home, Amara. I was shocked. I will write a statement about what I observed. By mid-afternoon, promises of support were flowing in. People had seen what I had been too close to notice: the systematic exploitation, the emotional manipulation, the calculated parasitism disguised as family need. As I was organizing these potential witness statements, my phone rang with an unknown number. Hello? Auntie Amara? It was Zara again, her voice barely above a whisper. Dad and Sarah are really mad. They're packing everything. They say we're going home early. My stomach tightened. Where are you, sweetheart? In the bathroom. They don't know I'm calling you. Are you okay? Are they treating you well? They're fighting a lot. Sarah keeps saying you're trying to ruin their lives. Dad broke a lamp. Alarm bells rang in my mind. Zara, is he being violent? Do you feel safe? He just threw it. He's not hurting us or anything. She paused. Auntie Amara, they took your blue suitcase and dumped all your clothes in the motel dumpster. Sarah said you'd never get your stuff back. The petty vindictiveness was so typical of Sarah, but it still stung. Don't worry about my clothes, sweetheart. I'm more concerned about you and Mason. I have to go, she said suddenly. I think they're looking for me. The call ended abruptly, leaving me with a growing sense of unease. David had always had a temper, but he had never been physically violent in front of the children before. The fact that he was breaking things worried me. I called Officer Jenkins again and relayed Zara's information, emphasizing my concern for the children's safety. I'll send a patrol car to do a welfare check, he promised. If there are any signs of danger to the children, we can involve family services. The thought of Zara and Mason being placed in foster care was devastating, but if David's behavior was escalating, their safety had to come first. An hour later, Officer Jenkins called back. The patrol found them packing their car to leave. The room was a mess, but both children appeared physically fine, if upset. There wasn't enough evidence of danger to remove them, but we've documented the visit. I thanked him, feeling both relieved and concerned. At least the children weren't in immediate danger, but the situation was clearly volatile. As evening approached, Eleanor called to check on me. When I explained the latest developments, she invited me to dinner at her cabin. You shouldn't be alone with all this going on, she insisted. I'm making pot roast and Marcus is bringing his girlfriend. It'll do you good to have some normal human interaction. She was right. I needed a break from the constant stress and strategizing. I drove to Eleanor's cabin, bringing a bottle of wine I'd found in the luxury cabin's wine rack. Dinner with Eleanor. Marcus and his girlfriend Lily was exactly what I needed. Warm, uncomplicated human connection with people who expected nothing from me except conversation and companionship. Over homemade pot roast and apple pie, I found myself sharing not just the recent betrayal, but the years of one-sided giving that had led up to it. You know what the saddest part is? I said as we lingered over coffee. I kept giving because I was afraid of being alone. I thought if I stopped financing their lives, they would cut me off from the children, and I'd have no family at all. In the end, they cut me off anyway, but took my money first. Eleanor reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Family isn't always blood, Amara. Sometimes it's the people who show up when everyone else walks away. Her words touched something deep inside me. Looking around the table at these people who had been strangers just days ago, I felt a connection that had nothing to do with obligation or blood ties. They had shown up for me when my own brother had not only walked away, but had tried to ensure I couldn't follow. As I drove back to the luxury cabin under a canopy of stars, I felt stronger than I had since the abandonment. I had support, legal, emotional, and practical. I had evidence. I had witnesses willing to corroborate my story. And most importantly, I had begun to see that my worth wasn't tied to what I could give to others. The next morning, I received an email from Patricia Lawson with good news. The judge had granted our request for an emergency hearing regarding the stolen funds, scheduled for 2 days later. Additionally, the bank's fraud department had placed a temporary freeze on David and Sarah's accounts pending investigation. This doesn't guarantee recovery of your money, Patricia cautioned when I called her, but it prevents them from spending any more of it while the investigation proceeds. I was updating my documentation when my phone rang. Officer Jenkins again. Ms. Okafor, I wanted to let you know that your brother and his family have checked out of the Blue Mountain Motel. According to the manager, they left in a hurry this morning without paying their full bill. They're running, I realized aloud. Possibly, he agreed, but they can't outrun a fraud investigation or a civil judgment. We have their home address and employment information. After hanging up, I sat on the deck, processing this latest development. David and Sarah were fleeing, probably hoping to get home before the legal consequences caught up with them. Their hasty departure felt like both a victory and a loss. I had stood my ground, but at what cost to my relationship with the children? My phone buzzed with a text message from the unknown number Zara had been using. Dad says we're going home. He's driving really fast and won't stop. Sarah keeps crying. I'm scared. My heart raced. I texted back, "Tell me where you are right now." The response came a minute later. Just past sign for Chattanooga. They were heading back the way we had originally come, probably aiming for home in Atlanta. I texted again. Are you wearing seatbelts? Is your dad driving safely? Yes to seatbelts. No to safe. He's yelling and going really fast. I tried to remain calm as I called Officer Jenkins again and relayed this information. I'm worried about the children's safety. David is apparently driving recklessly while angry. I'll contact the highway patrol, he promised. Give me any details you have about the vehicle and their likely route. I provided Sarah's license plate number, the make and model of her SUV, and the information that they appeared to be heading toward Atlanta via Chattanooga. Try to keep in text contact with the child if possible, Officer Jenkins advised. Any additional location information could help highway patrol intercept them. I texted Zara again. Keep texting me about where you are. Police will try to stop Dad to make sure you're safe. Her response was immediate. Will he get in trouble? I hesitated, then decided honesty was best. Maybe. But your safety is what matters most right now. For the next hour, I received periodic updates from Zara about their location. I relayed each one to Officer Jenkins, who was coordinating with highway patrol. The tension was unbearable. David was clearly in a volatile state, driving at high speeds with the children in the car. Finally, a text from Zara made my blood run cold. Dad almost hit another car. Mason is crying. Sarah and Dad screaming at each other. I immediately called Officer Jenkins. The situation is escalating. They almost caused an accident. Highway Patrol has units in position, he assured me. They should intercept the vehicle within minutes. Those minutes felt like hours as I paced the luxury cabin, clutching my phone, waiting for updates from either Zara or the police. When my phone finally rang, it was Officer Jenkins. Highway Patrol has stopped the vehicle, he reported. Your brother has been arrested for reckless driving and endangering the welfare of children. The children are safe but upset. Child Protective Services has been called to the scene. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by concern for Zara and Mason. What will happen to the children? CPS will make that determination. Given the circumstances, they'll likely seek a temporary placement while they investigate. I'm their aunt, I said quickly. I've helped raise them. Could they be placed with me? That would be up to CPS, but having a family member willing to take them is always preferred to foster care. I'll make sure the responding officers have your contact information. After hanging up, I sat staring at the mountains visible through the cabin windows, my emotions in turmoil. I had wanted justice, but I hadn't anticipated it would come at such a cost. David arrested. The children in the custody of strangers. Sarah. Actually, I didn't know what had happened to Sarah. As if in answer to my unspoken question, my phone rang again. Another unknown number. Hello? Is this Amara Okafor? The voice was official, professional. Yes, this is she. This is Angela Martinez with Georgia Child Protective Services. I'm calling about your niece and nephew, Zara and Mason Okafor. My heart raced. Are they okay? They're physically unharmed, but understandably upset. Their father has been arrested, and their stepmother is also being detained for questioning regarding financial crimes. So Sarah had been caught in the net as well. I felt a complex mix of satisfaction and sadness. The children have asked for you repeatedly, Angela continued. We understand you're currently in the Blue Ridge area while they're near Chattanooga. Would you be willing and able to travel there to take temporary custody while we sort this situation out? Absolutely, I said without hesitation. I can leave immediately. She gave me an address for a CPS office in Chattanooga and explained I would need to bring identification and undergo a quick background check before the children could be released into my care. What about long-term? I asked. Their father and stepmother may be facing serious charges. That's a bridge we'll cross when we come to it, she said pragmatically. For now, the priority is getting the children somewhere safe with someone they trust. Within 20 minutes, I had packed my few belongings, locked up the luxury cabin, and was driving toward Chattanooga. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was leaving the beautiful cabin earlier than planned, just as David and Sarah had undoubtedly hoped when they abandoned me. But I was leaving on my terms, to take care of the children they had endangered. The 2-hour drive gave me time to think. My life had been upended in just 4 days. I had lost my savings, been betrayed by my brother, confronted my abusers, initiated legal proceedings, and now was about to take custody of 2 traumatized children. It was overwhelming, but also clarifying. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based on what was right, not on fear of losing my family's approval. At the CPS office in Chattanooga, I went through a series of interviews and background checks. I provided references, including Eleanor and Patricia Lawson, who both vouched for me by phone. I explained the complex situation, the abandonment, the theft, the confrontation, and now David's arrest. Angela Martinez listened carefully, taking detailed notes. This is an unusual situation, she admitted, but the children's clear attachment to you and your willingness to take them in is the deciding factor for immediate placement. When Zara and Mason were finally brought into the room, they ran to me with such force that I nearly fell backward. They clung to me, both crying, their small bodies shaking with the release of pent-up fear and confusion. It's okay, I whispered, holding them close. I'm here now. You're safe. Over their heads, I met Angela's eyes and saw approval in her gaze. Whatever happened next, whatever legal battles lay ahead, whatever financial challenges I would face, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. These children needed me, and I would not abandon them as their parents had abandoned me. As we left the CPS office, Mason looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Where are we going, Auntie Amara? We can't go home, can we? I took a deep breath. We're going to a beautiful cabin in the mountains. It has a game room and a hot tub and the most amazing view you've ever seen. Zara's eyes widened. Really? Is that where you've been staying? Yes, I said, smiling down at her. It was supposed to be a surprise for all of us on the road trip. And now it's going to be our sanctuary while we figure things out together. As I drove back toward Blue Ridge with the children safely buckled in the back seat, I reflected on the strange path that had led us here. David and Sarah had abandoned me at a gas station during our road trip. What they didn't know about the luxury cabin I'd rented was that it would become not just my sanctuary, but a haven for their children. Children they had endangered through their greed and recklessness. Sometimes betrayal doesn't destroy us. Sometimes it redirects us to where we need to be. The children's eyes widened as we pulled up to the luxury cabin. In the late afternoon light, the massive log and stone structure looked like something from a fairy tale, perched on its ridge with the mountains sprawling behind it. This is where we're staying? Mason asked in awe. This is it, I confirmed, helping them out of the car. I rented it for 2 weeks. It's like a castle, Zara whispered, her hand gripping mine tightly. Inside, they explored with growing excitement. The soaring great room, the gourmet kitchen, the game room with its pool table and air hockey. For a brief time, they were just children discovering a magical new place, their traumatic day temporarily forgotten. But reality couldn't be held at bay for long. As I prepared a simple dinner in the kitchen, Zara sat at the counter watching me with serious eyes. "Is Dad going to jail?" she asked bluntly. I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Your dad is in some trouble right now. I don't know exactly what will happen, but he might have to stay with the police for a while." "Because he took your money?" Her perception startled me. "You know about that?" She nodded solemnly. "I heard them talking. Sarah said they deserved your money more than you did because they have kids, and you don't." The casual cruelty of that statement hit me hard. All those years of supporting them, loving their children as my own, and Sarah had reduced my worth to my reproductive status. And then Dad drove too fast and scared us, Mason added, joining the conversation from where he'd been setting the table. "Is that why the police took him away?" "Yes," I said gently. "Driving dangerously with children in the car is something the police take very seriously." "What about Sarah?" Zara asked. "Is she in jail too?" "She's talking to the police," I explained, unwilling to go into the complexities of criminal charges versus detention for questioning. "I don't know exactly what will happen with her either." Mason's lower lip trembled. "Are we going to go to foster care?" "No," I said firmly, coming around the counter to pull them both into a hug. "You're staying with me. I promised CPS that I would take care of you, and that's exactly what I'm going to do." "For how long?" Zara asked, her arms tight around my waist. "For as long as you need me," I promised. "We're family, and family takes care of each other. Real family, not people who just say they're family but don't act like it." After dinner, I helped them unpack the small bags of belongings that CPS had retrieved from Sarah's SUV. Their things were jumbled together, evidence of the hasty departure from the motel. As I folded Mason's t-shirts, I found one of my own scarves mixed in with their clothes, a small reminder of what had been stolen from me, now returned by chance. Once the children were settled in their rooms, Mason in the bunk room, Zara in one of the queen bedrooms, I sat on the deck with a glass of wine and called Patricia Lawson to update her on the dramatic developments. "This changes things," she said thoughtfully after I explained about David's arrest and the children coming into my care. "The criminal charges for reckless driving and child endangerment strengthen our case about their character and judgment. But having the children with you adds a new dimension to the civil suit." "How so?" I asked. "You're now financially responsible for their care, at least temporarily. We can petition the court to have David and Sarah pay child support while the children are with you, in addition to the restitution for the stolen funds." The thought of asking for money from David and Sarah after everything felt strange, but Patricia was right. The children's needs had to be considered. "What's likely to happen with their criminal charges?" I asked. "David is facing serious charges: reckless driving, child endangerment, possibly fleeing to avoid prosecution if they can prove that was his intent. Sarah's charges would be related to the financial crimes, fraud, identity theft. Both could be looking at jail time, especially David. The reality of what that would mean for the children settled heavily on my shoulders. If both David and Sarah went to jail, Zara and Mason would need more than temporary care. They would need a stable home, possibly for years. "I want to apply for guardianship," I said, the decision crystallizing in my mind. "Not just temporary custody, but legal guardianship." "That's a big step," Patricia cautioned. "Are you sure? Those children have been through enough upheaval. They need stability, consistency, love. I can provide that." "Let me look into the process," she promised. "In the meantime, document everything about their care, expenses, emotional state, any communication with or about their parents. It will all be relevant to a guardianship petition." After hanging up, I checked on the children. Mason was already asleep, his small body curled around a stuffed dinosaur. Zara was sitting up in bed, reading a book she had found on the cabin's bookshelf. "Everything okay?" I asked softly from the doorway. She nodded, then hesitated. "Auntie Amara, can I ask you something?" Anything, sweetheart. Did you know that Dad and Sarah were going to leave you at that gas station? The directness of her question caught me off guard. No, Zara. I had no idea. I thought maybe it was a joke at first, she said, her eyes downcast. Then Dad said you decided to go home early. But I knew that wasn't true because you were so excited about the trip. It wasn't a joke, I confirmed gently, and I didn't choose to leave. They left me there on purpose. Why would they do that? The confusion in her voice broke my heart. Sometimes adults make very bad decisions, especially when money is involved. Your dad and Sarah made a terrible choice, and now they're facing the consequences. She was quiet for a moment, processing this. I'm sorry they did that to you. It's not your fault, Zara. None of this is your fault or Mason's. I know. She looked up at me with eyes too wise for her 12 years. But I'm still sorry. You didn't deserve that. I crossed the room and sat on the edge of her bed, pulling her into a hug. Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot to me. As I held her, I felt a profound shift in my understanding of family. For years, I had clung to David and Sarah, financing their lives, overlooking their flaws, all for the sake of maintaining a connection to these children. I had feared that without my brother's approval, I would lose Zara and Mason. But here they were, in my arms, in the luxury cabin that was supposed to be a surprise gift for the family that had betrayed me. The irony was both painful and perfect. I had lost the family I thought I needed to keep, only to gain a truer version of it through that very loss. The next week unfolded in a blur of legal consultations, CPS meetings, and attempts to create a semblance of normalcy for the children. David remained in custody, unable to make bail due to the frozen accounts. Sarah had been released pending further investigation, but was barred from contacting the children until a formal hearing. Patricia helped me file for temporary legal guardianship, using the police reports, CPS recommendations, and witness statements to build a compelling case. The emergency hearing was set for the following week, just before we would need to leave the luxury cabin. What happens then? I asked Patricia during a phone consultation. The cabin rental ends in 5 days. I can't take them back to Atlanta yet. My condo is too small for 3 people, and all my money is still tied up in the fraud investigation. We need to request expedited release of some of your funds on humanitarian grounds, she decided. I'll file the motion today, emphasizing the children's needs. In the meantime, Eleanor had become our local guardian angel. She brought home-cooked meals, offered to watch the children when I had legal consultations, and provided emotional support when the stress threatened to overwhelm me. You're handling this with such grace, she told me one evening as we sat on the deck watching the sunset while the children played board games inside. Most people would have crumbled under the pressure. I don't have the luxury of crumbling, I said with a tired smile. Zara and Mason need me to be strong. Yes, but you also need support, she insisted. You don't have to do this alone. Her words echoed in my mind later that night as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the master bedroom. I had spent so much of my life believing that I had to earn family through financial support and constant availability. I had never considered that true family, biological or chosen, supported each other without keeping score. Eleanor had no obligation to help me, yet she had shown up consistently since the moment we met. Jasmine had been trying to warn me about David and Sarah for years, but I had been too afraid of losing my connection to the children to listen. Even my colleagues and distant relatives had stepped forward with statements and support once they knew what had happened. I had never been alone. I had just been looking for family in the wrong place. 2 days before we were set to leave the cabin, I received a call from the bank's fraud department. Ms. Okafor, we've completed our investigation and have determined that the transfers from your accounts were indeed unauthorized. We're processing the refund now, but it will take 3 to 5 business days for the funds to be available. It was the first piece of purely good news I'd received since the abandonment, and I celebrated by taking the children to a nearby trout farm where they could fish for their dinner. Watching their excited faces as Mason caught his first fish, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me since the abandonment. These children were resilient, and with proper support, they could recover from their parents' betrayal. That evening, as we grilled our fresh-caught trout on the cabin's deck, my phone rang with an unknown number. Hello, Amara? It's Sarah. My body tensed at the sound of her voice. How did you get this number? You're not supposed to contact us. I know, she said quickly. I'm calling from a friend's phone. Please don't hang up. I need to talk to you about the children. I moved away from the table where Zara and Mason were eating, stepping to the far end of the deck. I'm listening. David's being held without bail, she said, her voice strained. They're charging him with multiple felonies: child endangerment, reckless driving, fraud, identity theft. His lawyer says he's looking at 5 to 10 years minimum. I remained silent, letting her continue. And I'm facing charges too. Not as serious as David's, but still, there will probably be jail time. Why are you telling me this? I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. The children, she said, her voice breaking. They need someone to care for them long term. David's parents are too old and mine live overseas. There's no one else. The irony was almost too much. After abandoning me at a gas station and stealing my life savings, they now wanted me to take responsibility for their children while they served time for their crimes against me. I've already filed for guardianship, I said, not because either of you asked, but because I love Zara and Mason. Sarah was quiet for a moment. We really messed up, didn't we? That's an understatement. I didn't think it would go this far, she said. It was David's idea to leave you at the gas station. He said you'd be fine, that you always landed on your feet. The money was my idea. We had so many debts and you had so much just sitting there. Stop, I cut her off. I don't want to hear your justifications. What you did was cruel and criminal. You abandoned a family member at a remote location and stole her life savings. There is no explanation that makes that okay. You're right, she admitted, surprising me. There's no excuse. I want what's best for the kids. And that's you, Amara. It's always been you. The admission stirred complicated emotions. For years, I had sensed Sarah's resentment of my close relationship with the children. Now, in the face of losing them completely, she was acknowledging what I had always known, that in many ways, I had been more of a parent to Zara and Mason than either she or David. I'll take care of them, I promised. Not for you or for David, but for Zara and Mason. They deserve stability and love. Thank you, she whispered. Can I speak to them? I hesitated, unsure if this violated the court order. I don't think that's a good idea right now. There's a hearing next week about guardianship. We should let the legal process work. She didn't argue, which told me more about her mental state than any words could have. The Sarah I knew would have fought, manipulated, insisted. This subdued acceptance suggested she truly understood the magnitude of what she and David had done. After hanging up, I rejoined the children at the table, trying to hide my turbulent emotions behind a smile. But Zara, perceptive as always, studied my face. That was Sarah, wasn't it? She asked quietly. I nodded, seeing no point in lying. She wanted to check on you both. Is she going to jail too? Mason asked, his small face crumpled with worry. I don't know for sure, I said gently, but there might be some consequences for the bad decisions she and your dad made. What's going to happen to us? Zara's voice was steady, but I could see the fear in her eyes. You're going to stay with me, I said firmly. We have a hearing next week where a judge will hopefully make that official. And no matter what happens with your parents, I will be there for you both. Always. Mason came around the table and climbed into my lap, though at 10 he was really too big for it. Promise? I promise, I said, holding him close. We're family, and real family sticks together through everything. Over his head, I met Zara's gaze and saw understanding there beyond her years. She knew, as I did, that nothing would ever be the same. But she also saw my determination to create something new and better from the ashes of betrayal. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Patricia successfully petitioned for an emergency release of some of my funds, which allowed me to extend our stay at the cabin for another week while I figured out longer-term housing. The bank completed the refund of my stolen money, restoring financial stability I had feared was permanently lost. CPS conducted several visits to observe my interaction with the children, each one resulting in positive reports that strengthened my guardianship petition. Eleanor continued her invaluable support. even offering her guest cabin as temporary housing if needed. The day before the guardianship hearing, I took the children on a hike to a nearby waterfall. As they splashed in the pool at the base, laughing and carefree for the first time in days, I sat on a sun-warmed rock and reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 2 weeks. I had gone from being abandoned at a gas station, betrayed, stolen from, discarded, to standing on the brink of a new life as guardian to 2 wonderful children. The luxury cabin that was meant to be a surprise gift for the family that betrayed me had instead become the foundation for a new kind of family, one built on genuine love rather than obligation and manipulation. The guardianship hearing the next day was straightforward but emotional. Both David and Sarah had signed consent forms waiving their right to contest my petition. The judge, after reviewing the CPS reports, police documentation, and character references, granted me full legal guardianship of Zara and Mason, with provisions for supervised parental visitation once their criminal cases were resolved. Ms. Okafor, the judge said as she signed the final order, "These children are fortunate to have you in their lives. The court recognizes the extraordinary circumstances that brought you to this point and commends your commitment to their well-being." As we left the courthouse, Zara slipped her hand into mine. "So it's official. We're staying with you for real." "For real," I confirmed, squeezing her hand. "We're family now in the eyes of the law, not just in our hearts." "What happens next?" Mason asked, taking my other hand. It was the question I'd been pondering for days. I couldn't return to my 1-bedroom condo in Atlanta with 2 children. My job as a corporate training consultant required travel that wouldn't be compatible with raising children alone. Everything about my life would need to change. "First, we need to find a place to live," I said. "Somewhere with enough room for all 3 of us, near a good school for you both." "Can we stay in the mountains?" Mason asked hopefully. "I like it here." The question sparked an idea that had been forming in my subconscious. Blue Ridge was a beautiful area with good schools and a supportive community. Property was less expensive than in Atlanta. I could transition my consulting work to be primarily remote, with occasional travel when Eleanor could watch the children. "Maybe we can," I said, the plan taking shape in my mind. "Would you like that?" Both children nodded enthusiastically. "We could see Eleanor all the time," Mason exclaimed. "And fish in the trout pond." "And have a normal life," Zara added quietly. "Without all the fighting and money problems." Her insight pierced my heart. These children had been living with stress I hadn't fully comprehended, witnessing financial struggles, parental conflicts, and the constant tension of a household built on precarious foundations of debt and deception. That evening, back at the luxury cabin that had become our temporary haven, I made some calls and sent some emails. By the following morning, I had a lead on a modest 3-bedroom house for rent just outside Blue Ridge. A conversation started with my company about transitioning to remote work, and an appointment with a local school administrator to discuss enrollment for the children. Life was reshaping itself with surprising speed, forming new patterns around the unexpected gift of guardianship. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was one filled with purpose, love, and authentic connection. Everything I had sought but never truly found in my one-sided relationship with David. 3 months later, we were settled in a charming mountain home with a view that rivaled the luxury cabins, though on a more modest scale. The children were enrolled in the local school, making friends and slowly healing from the trauma of their parents' actions. I had successfully transitioned to remote work, with an office space in our home and a new schedule that allowed me to be present for after-school activities and weekend adventures. David had been sentenced to 8 years in prison for the combined charges of child endangerment, reckless driving, fraud, and identity theft. Sarah had received a lighter sentence of 3 years, with eligibility for parole after 18 months. Both had signed amended guardianship agreements giving me primary custody even after their release, acknowledging that stability for the children was paramount. One crisp autumn evening, as the leaves blazed in sunset colors across the mountains, I sat on our porch swing with Zara and Mason on either side of me. We were drinking hot chocolate and planning our first Thanksgiving in our new home. "Can Eleanor and Marcus come?" Mason asked, planning the guest list. "Absolutely," I agreed. "And my friend Jasmine is flying in from California." "It's going to be the best Thanksgiving ever," Mason declared with the certainty of childhood. Zara was quieter, thoughtful. Do you think Dad and Sarah ever think about us? About what they lost? I put my arm around her shoulders. I'm sure they think about you every day, sweetheart. Some people make terrible mistakes that cost them everything important. I believe they regret what they did, not just because of the consequences, but because they lost you both. She nodded slowly. I miss them sometimes. Is that okay? Of course it's okay, I assured her. They're your parents. You can miss them and be angry at them at the same time. Feelings are complicated like that. I'm glad we have you, Mason said, leaning against my side. You're better than them anyway. You never yell or throw things or cry about bills. His simple assessment made me smile, though it held a sadness too. Everyone makes mistakes, Mason, even me. But I promise, I'll always do my best for both of you. As darkness settled over the mountains and the first stars appeared, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had led us here. David and Sarah had abandoned me at a gas station during our road trip, thinking they were leaving me helpless and broken. They hadn't known about the luxury cabin I'd rented, the cabin that became my sanctuary and the foundation for this new life. Their cruelty, meant to destroy me, had instead set me free from one-sided giving, free from emotional manipulation, free from the exhausting charade of maintaining a family connection that existed only when it benefited them. In the end, their betrayal had given me the very thing they had tried to take away: a real family, built on mutual love, respect, and genuine connection. It wasn't the family I had expected, but it was infinitely more precious for having been forged in the fire of adversity and found worthy. Look, Mason pointed upward. A shooting star! We watched as a bright streak cut across the darkening sky, brief but brilliant against the eternal mountains. Make a wish, I whispered. Beside me, I felt the children close their eyes in silent wishing. I closed mine too, but I didn't wish for anything. Everything I truly needed was right here. 2 children who needed me as much as I needed them, a home filled with peace instead of tension, and the wisdom to know the difference between obligation and love, between sacrifice and exploitation, between the family we're born with and the family we choose. They had abandoned me at a gas station during our road trip. What they didn't know about the luxury cabin I'd rented was that it would become not just a place, but a metaphor for the life I was meant to build. Solid, beautiful, with room for growth and a view that reminded me daily of how far I had come and how much further I could still go. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more true stories like this one. Your support means everything to me. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in this situation? I read every comment and love hearing from all of you.